Welcome to the Teens Talk podcast, created by the Student Virtual Board of Youth Celebrate Diversity. YCD supports teachers and students organizing locally, educating themselves and their peers, and taking action for inclusion and social justice. For more information, please visit ycdiversity.org. Welcome to episode 3. Today we're tackling climate change from a unique interfaith perspective. I'm thrilled to be joined by Reverend Carol Devine, all the way from Kentucky. She's the director of One Home, One Future, a 7-year multi-faith campaign organizing for climate justice. Thanks for being here, Carol. Would you like to introduce yourself and your work as a faith leader?
Yeah, thanks so much. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here. I am Reverend Carol Devine. I'm an ordained minister with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I also would say that I am a tree hugger and have come to this place today in kind of both of those backgrounds.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love hearing about tree huggers. It's spring and stuff is in blossom, so it's great to hear that. So yeah, kind of going into your work with Interfaith, I know many young people I know are not necessarily active in congregations or in faith communities, and some people, this may be their first time kind of hearing about faith and activism. So can you kind of explain the fundamental principles behind interfaith work?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I would say that as long as I've been a pastor, or honestly, as long as I've been maybe even before I was an adult, I have been in situations, events, coming together with people of many faiths. That has been a part of my experience. I guess I've been blessed in that way. Probably there's some places, particularly smaller communities, where that is a little more rare. But basically, it is when people of many faiths come together on an issue or a task in order to stand together or move together, hold hands together. And it could be some examples of things that I've worked on in an interfaith way might be hunger, so food pantries or dealing with hunger issues in our community, homelessness, or those who are unhoused, addressing the needs of the unhoused in our communities. And then also now my work with climate and faith is people of many faiths who are coming together on climate justice. And I think that one of the important things that we know when we come together is that each of us come to this work fully as ourselves and fully in the faith that we represent. So we don't ask people to check their faith at the door, but to come fully as themselves and as representative of their faith, with respect to other faiths and other beliefs. And so there are times that there has to be maybe some discussion about that. So particularly if there's going to be any kind of prayer service or worship, then we might have to work out how do we do that in a way that's inclusive of everyone. But in general, everybody knows when they're coming together in an interfaith way that we are fully who we are, and we are open and respectful of everybody else and their faith, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds so great. And it's great to hear kind of, 'cause I feel like one thing I know about faith is that a lot of people build community out of that you're respecting that. So kind of, there's just so much to go into of this. What happens though, if like a person of faith or community sees an issue a bit differently? And how exactly have you kind of worked in interfaith to maybe resolve some of those differences? Because I know particularly there's an association of some faiths being more conservative or more progressive.
Yeah, so I think that what's really important is for folks to know going in that it is an interfaith event or action or space, right? And so there might be some who choose not to enter that space. So there are some people of faith who, for instance, don't believe that a female can be ordained as a minister or as a clergy person. So there are some faith traditions that don't acknowledge that. And so it's important for them to know, for instance, if there's something that I'm going to be at as a woman clergy person. So it has to be, we have to be really honest about what it is. And if people choose not to participate, then that's of course their right, and we respect that. But generally, when people know that this is an interfaith space, this is an interfaith event or action or whatever, they come to it with that expectation and that understanding. And again, like I said before, they come fully as they are, who they are. We recognize each other's dignity and beauty. We respect each other and each other's faiths. And I, of course, work in the area of climate and faith. And so we all enter this work of climate and faith from our holy texts, our holy scriptures, Bible or Quran or in whatever our text is. We come from that perspective, as well as the traditions of our specific faiths in this work. So, but all of us see together that we have one earth, we have one home, and we have one future. And so it is important that all of us see this one home, this earth, as sacred, and that we come together as seeing it sacred and wanting to do something for a more hopeful, bright, beautiful future for those who are yet to come.
Yeah, thanks for kind of clarifying that and kind of giving us a good scoop on what interfaith is, as well as some of your own work. So kind of going into you and your story, because it's just so awesome to have someone who is a woman clergy who knows about all this, who is as accomplished as you, Carol. So what kind of brought you to organizing around climate and environmental justice at a personal level?
Yeah, thank you. My story is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's common or not common, but I was in education, actually. I first was, I don't know if I told you this or not. I first was a preschool and kindergarten teacher, and had a master's degree in education, and was asked to fill in for someone who was on sabbatical at the University of Kentucky, to fill in teaching that university course. I loved it so much, and I guess I did an okay job. So for 13 years, I was teaching part-time at the University of Kentucky in the College of Education. And then I was actually getting ready to start my PhD work in education, and was going to work on that and have a beautiful, wonderful career in academia. When I was called, as the words that we use, when I was called to ministry, I felt a very strong call to become a minister. I wasn't super excited about that. I didn't want to be a minister. I never saw myself as a minister. And so there was a little struggle with that. But I always have been what I would call a tree hugger or an environmentalist, or whatever words you would say. The natural world has always been important to me, and how I live in community with it. And so when I was in seminary, actually, it was in a seminary class on eco theology that I realized that my tree hugger self was actually me living out my faith. And that my call to ministry was about helping other people make that connection. That for so many people still today, they have their faith self and climate justice or creation care or environmentalism or whatever words we use, they see those as separate. And so my call is about helping people realize, no, as a person of faith, this is part of my faith. It isn't separate or outside my faith. And so I went to seminary. I became actually a pastor for 14 years here in Kentucky. But all along, the thing that really has driven the passion of my own heart and my faith is creation care, climate justice. And so for the past a little over 2 years, I've been doing this interfaith work nationally with the organization called Blessed Tomorrow. So that's, in a nutshell, my story.
Yeah, that's quite a story. It takes a long time sometimes to discover what you want to do and to spend that much time dedicated to something. You right around the block. So I was kind of wondering, tying this idea of you back to like your faith, how does your faith like strengthen, or how is it impacted when you're working with people from different backgrounds or other faiths?
Yes, um I think that I have been blessed to grow up in a family and in a faith, in a Christian faith that has always encouraged me to question my beliefs, to question my faith. And I believe that as we question, critique our own faith, it is strengthened, right? So when we are doing interfaith work, and when I am with, Buddhists and Muslims and Jews and Baha'i and all kinds of faiths, as I get to know their faith, as I read their faith, and as I have experiences from within their communities, it helps me to see the similarities, the commonalities, as well as the differences of like, oh, that's different than how we do things, or that's very similar to how we worship or what we believe. And so it helps me, and I would guess others as well, um, to appreciate my own faith and to see those connections and similarities, but also to appreciate the things that are unique to my own tradition. And it might be, maybe if you thought of it this way, like I'm from Kentucky and I love the state of Kentucky. But as I have traveled, I have gotten to know the similarities of Kentucky with another state or even another country, the similarities of the Kentucky culture with other state, cultures, or other international cultures even. And it has enabled me to go, oh, that's really awesome that Kentucky is like this, or, ooh, that's not so great. Help me to see the really great things about Kentucky, but also want to work on the things that maybe aren't as strong. But in the end, my travels have made me love coming home to Kentucky, and so maybe it's something kind of like that. That as I go out and learn about other faiths, when I come home to my own faith, it feels really good.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, and a really different kind of way of seeing how like it doesn't always, it sometimes it's good to go out of your comfort zone and try new things, and that doesn't always pull you away from who you are, what you
That's
believe in. So that's just very beautiful to hear. Environmental activism has a long history of being kind of informed by scientists, so change coming through policy adoption. How exactly can congregations kind of integrate the science and politics needed to do this action with their faith?
Okay, that's a big question. And so first, I just want to say that people of faith and religious communities have always been involved with environmentalism and environmental activism. Um, in fact, I guess I would say if we went back, if we're looking at just the US, if we went back, the faiths have been involved in this longer than we have been messing things up as a nation in the US. Um, so frequently, people of faith are on the front lines of social change when we think about civil rights and so many other issues. And the other thing I want to say is that congregations do not have to integrate science, because it has never been separate. I acknowledge that there are some particular faiths who do not believe in evolution or Big Bang theory, but they are a small number. And so for most people of faith, it's not having to integrate science. That's just part of who we are and how we live, and it isn't seen as separate. I also would like to lift up that for many people, religious or not, they come to experience, the divine or the holy or sacred or mysticism or whatever words we want to use through nature. So for religious people or non-religious people, for spiritual people or people who don't identify as spiritual, there's something really mystical, beautiful about, hiking or kayaking or, whatever that experience is, mountain climbing at the ocean, where it just feels like when you have that like awe feeling of like, oh my gosh, I feel so connected, right, to everything around me. It's all so beautiful. I'm so blessed or honored or thankful to be in this moment. That I would call as like a divine moment. And so in that way, religious community, people of faith have always been connecting nature and the natural world, and therefore wanting to care for and love it. The other thing that as you were asking the question, it's a big question, but the other thing that I wanted to lift up is when I have gone to political events here in my own home state, particularly it's usually around climate change or something to do with climate. When I get to those events, let's say at the Capitol, because I've been to quite a few there, I see so many people I know through the faith community. But unless they're wearing a collar like this or some kind of religious vestments, you wouldn't know that they're people of faith. So oftentimes when you look at activism or things that are going on, actually there's a whole lot of them on any issue who are people of deep faith, and that's why they're showing up there. So engagement in politics has also always been a part of living out our faith. I would say it's how we live out our faith out loud. Again, civil rights, of course, but also LGBTQ. Oftentimes we think about queer issues as against religious communities. But when you look again at the work that has been done, oftentimes it's people of faith and religious people who are leading on any justice issue. So I don't know that there has to necessarily be a teaching or for congregations of how to integrate. This is part of who we are and how we've lived. I will say that some politicians in just this past short amount of history, I don't know, in the past 10 years, have really worked hard and been quite successful at taking issues that have never been seen as political, like climate, and making it political, and that has caused some division within some congregations. But if they are able to step back and look at their own faith history, they see that this isn't antithetical to our faith, but how we live it out. Does that make sense? It's a big question. So
Yeah, that's a big thing to unpack.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really great. I get what you're saying. It's kind of saying that like it's always been there, that it doesn't need to integrate because the identity, it works together well. It's never been separate, kind of.
yeah. I would say for the majority of faith communities, politics and science are just part of religion and how we live out our faiths. And it's unfortunate that some issues like climate change have become political issues because they aren't political issues. They're justice, right? They're social issues, justice issues.
Yeah, that's a really great kind of framework to put out there. It's kind of cool looking back at history that, yeah, it's such a big issue that why does it need to be political or about all these things? Taking this in a little bit a different direction, how can young people in faith communities bring interfaith action to their congregations?
That's great. So I happen to be part of, I think that you know this, I happen to be part of a multi-faith campaign called One Home, One Future. And One Home, One Future was created by a coalition of many different faith leaders in order to support congregations with resources and events and connection, and to help them to take climate action. But equally or more importantly, it's about bringing faith communities together within their local towns, cities, etc. So trying to connect this congregation to that congregation, this church to that synagogue or to that temple in order to do climate work. And One Home, One Future from the get-go has really centered young people as the heart of this work, both for the purpose, like we need to be doing this for young people and for future generations. And also, we need to be making space for and learning from young people. And so One Home, One Future really centers youth in our work and supports them to lead in their congregations and in their cities and towns. So I guess the easy answer would be to check out One Home, One Future and to connect with us, because we have lots of resources and ways to connect with other congregations, with other people of faith, both on the national level, but also within local communities, and ways to connect with them. So that would be the short answer.
So much there. It's just so cool you have One Home, One Future as already a resource, because that was actually what I was going into with the next question of, are there any other kind of resources available for people of faith to kind of support their activism?
Yeah. So there are so many. That is the unfortunate secret is there are so many faith and climate resources, so many beautiful, amazing people who are leading on this issue. And so going back to One Home, One Future, we now have 42 denominations and faith organizations that make up One Home, One Future, and it's growing. And so within One Home, One Future, within our website and within our work, someone can see the work of any of these 42 organizations and be able to check out, but also connect with their work. And also One Home, One Future is kind of a resource hub for all 42 partners, so that you can go to one place and find, oh, I would like resources on, money, divestment, that kind of thing. Oh, they're there. Or I want resources on gardens, community gardens. We have that there. So there's all these resources there that folks can check out. And then if they want to go deeper onto something that one of the partners is leading, then they are connected with them too. So it's just, there's so many people, so many congregations who are doing such great work in this area. And so this is one way to connect with that.
So it's all there on One Home, One Future. And are you taking like new congregations? Like, is there like, are you trying to help someone meet?
Always, any congregation, any person of faith is welcome, and it's all free. We never ask you to pay anything. So all of our trainings, all of our events, all of our resources are free to anybody. Anybody can join. And yes, we welcome it for sure.
Yeah, great. Just expanding the movement and stuff there. And I bet there are a lot of great resources and kind of guides with
Yes.
that much collective action.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yeah. And you know what? Let me just lift up one, since we were just talking about young people and talking about One Home, One Future. May is Mental Health Month. And so One Home, One Future, we have some new resources that we have put out for May, particularly as we care for children and youth. And so we know that young people are feeling the mental health impacts of climate change more than any other age group. And so we want to support faith leaders and communities of faith to learn and know about the mental health impacts on young people of climate change, and to be able to support and care for and nurture the young people in their congregations. And so we're trying to do that with lots of topics. So as topics come up, we're creating new resources, and we also have resources in Spanish as well. So really trying to have this full resource hub for any person of faith.
yeah, that's just really incredible that you're so inclusive and just trying to expand an outreach to everyone. And kind of going back to young people, I want to kind of go back to a question a bit before. I was wondering, could a young person who is like maybe high school or college bring any of this stuff like to their congregation or be able to work with their faith leaders to create change? Like, how
A
does that work?
hundred, 100%, 100%. So first of all, any person can join. So a young person can join the campaign as an individual, or the young person can get resources and go to the leadership of their congregation and say, I want us to do this. You can nominate, like, so on our join page, if you think I can't join for my congregation, but you can nominate, hey, this is my home congregation, will you reach out to them? The other thing is that I'm available and our team is available. We're small, but we're a mighty team, and we're here to support anybody, but particularly young people, because like I said before, the impacts on young people are greater. There's nobody more impacted than those who have yet to be born, right? In terms of climate change. And so we as a team at One Home, One Future and at Blessed Tomorrow want to support you. So anybody would be welcome to reach out to me or just through One Home, One Future for sure.
Yeah, thanks for offering yourself up such a big resource in this topic and all this expertise. I was also kind of wondering about that question back to like there are so many people of faith, but they're just not as visible. What can congregations and people of faith do to kind of improve the visibility of their activism and become more central to the conversation around social change?
So important. I cannot say more how important it is that visibility is so central to this. Like I said before, you know, when I go to climate events here in Kentucky, I see so many people of faith there, but unless they are wearing a clergy collar or wearing some kind of, you know, vestments, nobody would know that, right? And so the same, if I drive by a congregation that I know is engaged in climate work, I wouldn't know that by driving by. If I go to their website, so it's really important that we as people of faith, as congregations, are more visible and that we put on our websites, this is key to who we are. In the same way that we might put out a rainbow flag to say all are welcome here, we also need to put out some kind of a sign on our website and on our building that says this is important. We care about the earth and we're doing what we can to work for climate justice. So that is also part of what we're trying to do with One Home, One Future is give literal tools for people to lead visibly and to give people the words, the story to tell. All of us, I would hope, all of us have a creation care or a climate story. And maybe part of leading visibly is being able to say, I feel most connected to the holy when I'm on a hike. And that's really important to me. And I want these woods that are in Kentucky to be preserved and here for many, many generations to come. And I want that, you know, so having whatever that story is that we can tell is another way that we can individually be visible. And then I would also say social media, right? As a congregation or as a person of faith is posting, we need to be posting a lot having to do with climate justice. That needs to be a theme that people see on our feed.
So you got higher standards. You're saying just make it all more visible, basically. Just put it to
Yes,
the forefront of everything.
yes, 100%.
That's great. Yeah, and that makes me also kind of wonder, moving on to the next thing of that is what about the people who are not necessarily part of congregations or consider themselves people of faith? How can they kind of get involved or work well with people of faith in this kind of collective action of climate justice?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is Indigenous people have been leading on this issue, have been telling us for all of time the importance of living in community with the more than human world. And so it's really important that all of us, religious people and non-religious people, to recognize that We are all connected to each other and to the more than human world. And to be quite honest, we're completely dependent upon it, right? The earth will do just fine without humans. The humans cannot live without the earth and the more than human world. And as you know, our DNA between human to human is 99.9% the same. We are so similar in our DNA to each other, even if we don't look alike, even to people we don't like, right? We are literally so connected. But not just that, our DNA is more similar than different from creatures, from trees, from plants, from all living things. When you look at our DNA, we're more similar than different. We're all connected, we're all related, and we're all in this together, right? We do literally have one home and one future. And the great news is that we can do something about this when we come together. I'm thinking right now about the midst of the COVID pandemic. Do you remember when the whole world shut down? You know, this was a global pandemic. The whole world just shut down. And we were able to, in a very short amount of time, stop and pivot in order to save lives, literally to save lives. And so we just need that kind of energy and commitment to be able to stop and pivot quickly on this issue. So we know what we need to do. We have all the information we need from scientists and from technical leaders on climate, that we need to stop burning fossil fuels and polluting our water, air, and soil. And then we need to pivot quickly to the healing of the earth, to prioritizing biodiversity, to cleaning up and caring for the natural world, the more than human world. And so the other beautiful thing is that we know from research that the majority of Americans agree that all of us deserve clean air, clean water, clean soil, right? We all deserve that. And so our elected officials, as well as all of the various systems in which we live, whether it be governmental or corporate or school systems or all of those, we all have to stop and pivot. And we can. We've proven that we can. And so that was a little bit of a long answer. So, but we're all in this together. Our future is together, and there is really no other way. It isn't a future for people of faith over here and for people who are not religious over here. It is, we have one future together, and it's really important that we come together in love, I would say, in order to make a better way for young people like yourself, and then also for future generations.
Yeah, that's really important and touching to be able to hear it, because it's just really, yeah, important for people just to come together and respect whoever they are, come as they are, but still work together to make the world a better place. So just once again, very well said, Carol. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I was wondering if you had any kind of final thoughts or words of wisdom kind of at the conclusion of this conversation.
Well, I first would just give you great thanks. You're just such a beautiful human, and such a great spirit, and I'm so thankful for you. And I guess the last thing that I would just say is that it's important for young people to know that there are a lot of older people who are really working hard, are dedicating our lives for a better future, one that we may not be able to enjoy, but one that we are working really hard so that you and future generations might have, you know, abundant life, a beautiful, hope-filled life. And if we can just focus on how amazing it will be for us to have clean air, clean water, renewable energy, so that that our bills are lowered and the impact on the earth is so much lessened, where justice is central, where we're supporting particularly young people, but all people's like physical and mental health, and prioritizing the mental health. I do want young people to know that there are a lot of old people who are doing this work, and we're doing it because we care so much for you all and for future generations.
That's Carol. Yeah, you're one of them. Just thank you so much for that.